The Green Bay Packers have made some big splashes in free agency so far. So where do they go from here? Plus, just who is new Packers star running back Josh Jacobs? Your boy Q from Locked On Raiders joins us on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Your boy Q is on the show today talking about Josh Jacobs, and I teased this earlier in the week. Aaron Jones was the heart and soul of this Packers team. Losing him is brutally difficult for the team, for fans, for that locker room. Josh Jacobs was that for the Raiders. And he was the guy that when things were tough, you're going to hear Q say, Josh Jacobs was the guy who held everything together when the Raiders couldn't hold anything together. That's a powerful line. It's not just that the Packers replaced Aaron Jones. It's that they replaced him with a guy of similar character, of similar caliber in terms of his ability on the field. It wasn't like they replaced Aaron Jones' heart and soul with some jag, some just a guy. It wasn't like they cut him to go hyper cheap. No, they said, we believe in this other guy, and there are real reasons to do that. I don't want to preempt all of it. What I do want to do is try and figure out, okay, what the Packers want to do from here. They get Xavier McKinney. That was the big domino to fall. They get Josh Jacobs. They replace Aaron Jones. I would not expect any more running back moves to be made. They like Emmanuel Wilson. They're probably going to draft someone else in the middle rounds. I wouldn't expect big money investment in terms of draft capital. But they still have this question mark at linebacker. They still have this question mark at the other safety position. And I think they will take two different approaches on this. I think they will add a linebacker at some point. I think they have to add a linebacker before the draft. Whether that's Jerome Baker or someone else a little bit further down the pay scale, Tom Silverstein reporting the Packers for now are more or less done. But they were reportedly in on the Josie Jewell market. That's middle to upper middle class linebacker money. So that means someone like a Jerome Baker, the former Miami Dolphin, whose linebackers coach is in the building, would make sense for Green Bay from a cost standpoint. But we also have seen that the linebacker market has not been as hot as we thought. The projected numbers for Patrick Queen were like in that 18 million APY range, and he got 13, and it's probably not even 13. Like, now we know when we've seen the money, the Xavier McKinney money, it's not 4 for 68. It's not. 16.5 million in the final year and 8.5 in a roster bonus going into that final year. So you're talking about what, $25 million in that final year that he's probably not going to see, at least in that form. Like, this is a 3-year 50, 3 years 52. It's a $14 million a year deal, but that doesn't look as good in a tweet. I think someone like Baker, you could get for 7 or 8. Now, the Packers don't really have a ton of money, but there's always money in the banana stand. And when you look at the way that they've structured these deals, I mean, Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney are not costing an arm and a leg this year. There are ways to manipulate these numbers. They don't want to play in the void year space. I understand that. But if the Packers really wanted to do it, they could. Now, the other option is to wait until like third wave free agency, like right before the draft. So this first week passes, first wave free agency is kind of over already. Like we almost should have legal tampering be its own first wave. Enough guys have gone where like you look at a top 100 list, those guys are gone, more or less. Jordan Poyer signs for a $2 million contract 1 year. There are still a ton of starting caliber safeties out on the market the Packers could go get. Now they found the hard one to get. They found their post safety, we think. I don't think they would have spent what they spent if they didn't think he could be a full-time post safety player in a one high kind of defense. It's easier to find those other guys. They could just bring back Rudy Ford. Jonathan Owens goes to the Bears. I think Rudy Ford is someone who I would really like to see in that role. If you can get him for the vet minimum, worst case scenario, you got a special teams player. I would really like that. But they can wait until just before the draft or after the draft. See what you can get in the draft. Do you like Cole Bishop? Do you like Javon Bullard? Do you like some of these other strong safety type players? Do you like Tyler Nubin? Could you get that kind of positional versatility? I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. Someone who can play deep, ball skills. It'd be nice to have a ball skills guy next to McKinney because he's not a ball hawk. We heard that from Patricia Training yesterday. Be nice to have a playmaker, right? It'd be nice to have a guy who's going to make some interceptions. The Packers do not have enough of those kinds of players in their secondary right now. You don't have to go out and spend money on that. There are safeties on the market who you can get to just be guys. I mean, it's not going to cost you. I mean, the vet minimum is going to get you some of these guys if you want them. Do you? Do you? And that's going to be like, maybe it is Rudy Ford and day 2 draft pick. And that's enough. And look, it might be. You got Anthony Johnson Jr. in the building. I think he can play strong safety. I think he can play a little bit of post safety too. Where is Keyshawn Nixon going to play? I know you were waiting for the drink. You could play the Keyshawn Nixon to safety drinking game. They do not need to play in the deep waters anymore. And so they can get frisky before the draft or they can wait. And I think waiting has its advantages because you're going to wait out the market and hopefully get stuff for cheap. But like the safety market already stinks. You can get someone for cheap right now. It'd be nice to just go into the draft saying, we don't need anything. You could get an older, like the Tayshaun Gibson. I know he's 32, 33. You could sign him for 1 year, 2, and know that regardless of what happens in the draft, if it doesn't fall, the board doesn't fall the right way, you're fine. Now, he played free safety, whatever. Xavier McKinney is versatile enough that you can do a lot of different kinds of things with him. The point is, there are guys out there that you could get for cheap. And you don't have to wait. Like if it's going to be cheap, why wait? You're risking those guys drying up. And they could. They probably won't, but they could. I think it makes more sense to be a little bit more aggressive at linebacker, to go get your Jerome Baker. I'm just going to keep saying that name until the Packers sign him. And figure it out because there's not really anyone in the draft to get. Like now that you have McKinney, and I saw someone, I'm sorry for not remembering who I saw say this on Packers Twitter. I think it was Zach Cruz. I think it was our pal Zach Cruz from Packers Wire who said, now that the Packers have McKinney, it's a lot easier to find. It makes the safety class look better, basically. Because now you don't have to find the perfect player. You don't have to find that post safety. You can find a guy who maybe he is just a strong safety. Maybe you can countenance Cam Kitchens because he doesn't have to be that middle of the field safety. He can just run the alley, play more in the box. That makes sense. The linebacker thing doesn't. There are just not linebackers to like in this class. There just really aren't. And that is going to push them up too because there's positional scarcity. So like Peyton Wilson from North Carolina State and Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M and Junior Colson from Michigan, Those guys are going to end up going in the top 60, even though maybe they don't deserve it based on the tape, because there just aren't that many of them. And every team needs them. That's not, you don't want to be working from a position of weakness like that. So I think it makes sense for the Packers to go out and get their linebacker and then figure out what you want to do at safety. You can go get the super cheap safety if you want, or you can wait. And I don't think that is a problem either way. All right, I want to get to our conversation with your boy Q to talk about Josh Jacobs. We're going to do that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. See the view from the seats before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know what you're getting, and you know you're getting a great deal when you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Game Time has flash deals and sponsored deals for tickets to basketball, football, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Joining me now to talk about the surprise signing, maybe of all early free agency, but certainly of the Packers offseason, one of the most surprising I can remember in recent Packers history. Josh Jacobs, the 2022 rushing champion in, Aaron Jones out. Your boy Q from Locked On Raiders joins me to talk a little bit about Mr. Jacobs. Q, Josh Jacobs was part of that monster Mike Mayock, John Gruden first round extravaganza where the only player that turned out to be worth anything was Josh Jacobs.
Right.
And so he comes onto the scene as a rookie and is everything they wanted him to be and more. What was your initial thoughts on Jacobs that first season?
Oh, I was ecstatic about Josh Jacobs. He was the guy that I wanted the Raiders to target. Watching him at Alabama, knew that he didn't have a whole lot of tread on the tires because he was part of a backfield that had many different running backs in it. So he wasn't the guy that was used all the time. He wasn't worn down like a lot of Alabama running backs. He was able to catch the ball in the backfield, even though for some reason the first year the Raiders acted like he didn't know how to catch the ball. And he consistently said, I did this in school. I caught the ball all the time. And he did, but they didn't believe it. But Josh Jacobs, man, he's a pro's pro. He's been a pro since he was, a rookie. I remember meeting him the day before the draft in Nashville before he got drafted, and just talking to him about his story, about, living in the car with his dad and being raised by his pops, and just a real humble kid. And I say kid because, I feel like I've grown up with him over the past, 4 or 5 years. He's a great dude, man. He really is. And really he's a blue collar guy. He's a hard hat guy. All those great cliches that you want to say, lunch pail dudes, whatever you want to call them. That's who he is. But he has no problem, as Antonio Pierce called him last season when AP took over, the heart and soul of the team. He has no problem being the heart and soul of the team.
Yeah, and for the Packers, he's replacing Aaron Jones. And that is about as big a shoe as you can fill as a running back in terms of being the heart and soul of the team. When the Packers GM calls Aaron Jones the heart and soul of the team, it means something, right? And so I think that's going to be the hardest part from a fan perspective, is like Aaron Jones was beloved, but it sounds like what you're telling me is he is a perfect culture fit, growing up Tulsa, Oklahoma, like kind of similarly to, Aaron Jones, San Antonio, all of the Texas kid, but that Midwest sensibility, that blue collar sensibility. And he was a captain, right? Like this was a leader in that Raiders locker room.
Yeah, he was the guy that kept everything together when the Raiders couldn't keep anything together, right? I mean, not even in 2023, but in 2022 when he led the league in rushing, I mean, the Raiders had no identity. If you go back and look at it, the first 5 weeks of the season, nobody knew what the hell they were trying to do. What's Josh McDaniels trying to do? And finally, Josh Jacobs was like, just give me the damn balls, kind of like Keyshawn Johnson, like, give me the ball and let me do what I do. And he established an identity, and he put the team on his back, and he was the the hope that made everyone feel good. Like, you know what? The Raiders are a mess right now, but they still got 28. They still got Josh Jacobs. He is that dude, and he's putting it all out there, even when the team made him go and play in the Hall of Fame game. I mean, think about that. They made him get some burn in the Hall of Fame game. So as Josh McDaniels said at the time, he can get calloused up and get used to getting hits as a running back. And we all know what that was all about. But, just the thing about it is he didn't worry about it. He didn't get upset about it, at least not publicly. He didn't, pout about it and say, trade me. He just said, okay, you want to play me in the Hall of Fame game? I'm going to go for 1,600 plus yards and put a decision on your head. And they did. They made the wrong decision. They didn't sign him to a long-term deal, and now he's a member of the Green Bay Packers, and that's going to be great for all the cheeseheads out there. They're going to love Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, before we came on here, you said you were pretty disappointed to see him go. Can you just explain why?
He's a dude, man. I mean, off the field, too. Just a great dude. I literally, after Week 18's game against Denver, he didn't play in that game. He was injured the last 4 games, but he was there cheering on the guys. I've always, like I said, I covered him back in 2019 before he was ever a member of the Raiders. He was, met him in Nashville, and he came up to me in the locker room as we were doing post-game, and he said, hey, man, I don't know what's going to happen, but you've been an A1 dude since day one, and thank you. And he didn't have to do that, right? I'm just another dude in the locker room covering the team, but he singled me out to say, I've respected you since day one. You've always kept it real, never none of that BS, but you're just a good dude. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be back, but if I'm not, I want to say thank you. And so that's my lasting impression of Josh Jacobs, the guy that just got a big contract from the Packers. He didn't have to worry about little old Q. Like, who am I? I know I'm just another dude, but he made sure to thank the people that have been covering him and, have an opportunity to really grow with them. So, yeah, he's a guy that I have so much respect for, and I wish him nothing but success, and I know he'll be very successful for Green Bay. You got a good one for sure.
2022, he leads the league in rushing and was the number 1 graded runner. I mean, he was unbelievable that season. What clicked for him other than he stayed healthy, played 17 games, but he was explosive. He broke tackles. I mean, the numbers, I read them out the other day. He had 94 first downs that year. No running back had more than 69. Like, he was easily the most productive back in the league. What happened? Why did it click for him?
Well, I mean, part of it was out of, anger for, them not picking up his 5th-year option. The new staff came in. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option. They drafted Zamir White, and they assumed that was going to be the guy that replaced Josh Jacobs. And he was like, wait, hold on, I'm still here. And then they made him play in the Hall of Fame game. And he said, okay, well, I'm just going to get to free agency a year later or a year earlier. So he went out there and he balled out, and he played through some injuries as well. But he put the team on his back when he knew that they needed him. And again, there was nothing there. The offensive line wasn't very good. There was a time in this 2022 season where he was running, I think it was like week 3 or 4. And, post game, he said, well, you see the offensive line. I mean, where am I supposed to go? I'm trying to run the best I can, hard as I can. There's not really nothing there, but, he kept working at it. And on top of that, encouraging the offensive line. When they weren't playing very well, he's like, guys, I got you. Just give me a little something and I got you, and I'll make everything right. And he did. And so, he just kind of stuck by being that guy and being that captain and being that leader, which he's always been. And so that was real respectable. And then on top of that, he said that, hey, I dedicated myself to, making sure I had a dietitian. They made sure that my food was right. I've been working out extra hard. I mean, he was very motivated for that season. It was a contract year. Guys are always going to be motivated in a contract year. Sure. And honestly, he didn't have to play as hard as he did in 2023, and he was dealing with a pretty bad injury, and he was still out there every week trying to go. I mean, even though he missed the last 4 games, you saw it in him that he was hurting not being out there. He really wanted to be out there, and instead of just pouting, he went and supported Zamir White and kept encouraging him, who he knew he was going to eventually take his job. He kept encouraging him to go out and be the best running back he could. So, again, A1 dude, he's going to give you a good 15 to 17 games, and he's going to give you everything he's got.
That's going to be the question, I think, from Packers fans is, okay, we saw in 2022, he was a bell cow back, everything you wanted from a premier running back, the best running back in the league that season. But running back play can be volatile because it's tough, especially when you have the sort of volume that he had in that season. So we talked about this off air a little bit about what, from your perspective, didn't go right last year. The reason that he just wasn't as good, wasn't as productive as we've seen him be.
Well, multiple things. One, he got to camp late. He held out because he had the franchise tag, so he didn't get to camp when he was supposed to. He was real bummed out. He was in the parking lot at the 11th hour waiting to sign the long-term deal, and they couldn't come to an agreement. Him and Max Crosby were sitting in the car together, hoping to get that deal together done, and it didn't come to fruition, so he was bummed. He didn't want to return to the Raiders at all with McDaniels as the head coach, but once Antonio Pierce took over, then he wanted to return. So he really wanted to come back.
Interesting.
He's even sent messages to a couple of us since the deal with the Packers has been announced. Like, I tried really everything I could to stay. Like, he really wanted to stay with AP and the Raiders. He just wasn't able to get it done financially. And you got to do what you got to do in the NFL. We know it's not for long. It's a business. So he did what he had to do. He got the deal from the Packers. But yeah, I mean, it was just a combination of everything. Wasn't very happy with the staff. Hated Josh McDaniels. I don't want to say hate, but didn't like Josh McDaniels. Like, a lot of the people in the locker room didn't like him. And it was a bad time for the Raiders in 2023 until Antonio Pierce took over. And then there was a new light that was shed on the organization. The sunshine came out on November 1st, and rainbows and puppy dogs were to be had. And it was good times again. And, you know, they didn't make the playoffs, but they showed some signs of life. And so that's where they're at right now. And a lot of guys want to be a part of that, not a part of what was Josh McDaniels and the staff that was, before AP.
Yeah, and that's why Antonio Pierce is there, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why he was retained. All right, we'll get to more with your boy Q in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. So get it started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial, LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I think that's gonna raise some eyebrows. Certainly that, what is it going to be like when things are bad?
Right.
And you mentioned early in his career when, he was playing well, hey, just let me do it. Just, like, I got you. I'm going to put us on my back when the chips are down. Like, the Packers started in a way that was not what anyone wanted to see early in the season. How is Josh Jacobs going to handle a situation like that now that he has been paid, not playing for the contract? It sounds like you're telling me he's the kind of guy that is going to be the rally around me kind of guy. But just let's say, they start, 1-2, 1-3, and it's not what everyone thinks it's going to be. How is he going to respond to that, do you think?
I mean, he's gonna do everything he can to make sure that they win, right? The one thing he hates to do is lose. And that's one thing he'll let you know is that he hates losing. And he says losing sucks.
And unfortunately, they did a lot of that in Las Vegas.
Right. Exactly. He hates losing. He comes from Alabama, so they didn't do a whole lot of losing there, won a national championship, so he knows what that's all about. He doesn't like losing, but he also knows that he's a reason why they could win. And so he'll take that and put that on him and say, hey, just give me the ball, give it to me 25 times. I'm going to get better as the game goes along, whatever the case may be. And he's going to do everything he can. He's going to catch the ball in the backfield. He's going to block. That's one thing. Jordan Love is going to love him because he's going to lay his body on the line to block and protect him and make sure the young quarterback does not get hit and does not get harmed and get sacked and all that. He's going to do everything he can, even if it's just flip me the ball the last second, just a blank moment, just toss it to me. I'm going to go and do something. I mean, he's that guy, right? And so, I mean, yeah, he'll after that game is lost, he'll stand in the locker room and be like, you know what? This is what went wrong. This is why it went wrong. And we need to fix this. And he'll be straight up about it. So win, lose, tie, whatever the case may be, he'll be in the locker room. He'll talk to you after the game and he'll tell you the truth. And that's what you could really appreciate about Josh Jacobs.
So he's 26, just turned 26. So he's still a young player, especially by running back standards. Even if he plays this whole contract, he's just going to turn 30 by the end of it. Where can he show more than he's shown? Because I look at his Alabama tape and I go, they used him vertically in the passing game. He's out there running routes. And you mentioned it, like the Raiders treated him like he couldn't catch early in his career. And even the last 2 years, it would sort of been dump offs, screens, swings, check downs. Whereas it seems like he's got more to show there. Where do you think he can still get better, if anywhere?
I think that in Green Bay, will probably use him as a receiver more, right? I mean, catch the ball even up the seam. I mean, I think he has that ability in him. He's never caught a touchdown in his career. Think about that. He's never caught a touchdown pass in his career. That's the one thing that he wanted to do. He got really close to doing it last year, and it never happened. So I do believe it won't take long in Green Bay for Matt LaFleur to figure out that, oh, by the way, this guy can catch the ball really well. For some reason, the Raiders kept thinking that he has to improve his catching skills. He really doesn't. He's a really good receiver, and he's really good afterwards, and he finishes the run strong. Like, he'll put his shoulder down. You know what he might do? He might get a penalty for unnecessary roughness because he'll initiate the contact on the defense, which I always laugh at. I'm thinking, are you serious? That's what we're calling here? But that's what's happened. He's got a few of those, but you'll take that every once in a while. Your running back is not going to run out of bounds. He's going to try to run through somebody. He's going to do like Marshawn Lynch always told him, run through someone and fire up the guys on the sideline. He likes to do that. So that's something that you'll see some punishing finishes by Josh Jacobs. But yeah, I think that the Green Bay Packers, they want to get the most out of him. Use him in the passing game as well, not just dump offs, but just as a receiver. Let him split out wide. He can make it happen. If
you're going to pick the perfect pair, a kind of running back who complements what Josh Jacobs does well, what are the traits you're looking for? Because I think the Packers, A.J. Dillon is probably going to be somewhere else. And so in the draft, there's some speed guys. There's some bigger backs. Like if you're going to put together, hey, this would be the perfect complement to Josh Jacobs, what does that running back look like?
I probably would think it'd be some guy that can hit the outside and just hit the home run. You're looking for, kind of a scat back, a quicker dude, maybe a little smaller guy. I mean, look, Josh is going to run between the tackles. He ain't the fastest dude, but you see the back of his jersey, he's not going to get caught too often, right? I mean, you can go back to, 2022 against Seattle when he walked it off and went for 300 yards in that game. And as soon as he hit the hole, there was no stopping him. I mean, once you see the back of his jersey, you're not going to catch him, but he's not the fastest dude. So if you can have a guy that could be that complement where he's just he's the home run hitter, that would probably be the best way because he could do the heavy lifting. He needs more than 8 to 10 touches a game. He needs like 20 to 25 touches a game. But if you have a guy that can get, 4 or 5 touches here and there and maybe break one for 30 or 40 yards, that's the best case scenario, I think, as far as the running back tandem goes.
Well, it is certainly something that I have a feeling Raiders fans are going to be monitoring closely from afar. Luckily, AFC to NFC, so like they don't have to worry about it. Plus, you guys have Devontae Adams, so I don't want to hear any complaints from Raider Nation. Q, always appreciate the time, man.
No doubt. Josh Jacobs is a good one, man. You got a good one. You'll love it. Appreciate you.
All right, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen. You guys are the best. We are trending hard on YouTube and Spotify and iTunes and all those places because Packer fans are the absolute best. Thank you, everyone who's engaged. The social media stuff, you guys have been off the charts with it. My goal here, and I had someone say this to me recently, and it really resonated with me. They told me, the show has made me feel closer to my team. That is my goal every single time I step in front of this microphone, is I want you guys to feel closer to the Packers when you're done with the show than when you started. That's what I want. And so I'm so glad that it resonates with so much of you. It is such a rewarding thing to be a part of these moments, the big moments when we all come together, when Cheesehead Nation is one and we react to these things. Back tomorrow, Tom Grossi, speaking of Cheesehead Nation, NFL Fan of the Year, tens of thousands raised. One of the best dudes that we have in the media. He's on the show. Our Super Bowl conversation. We met up in Vegas, had a great time. That is coming up tomorrow. Barring news. If there's news, of course, we'll talk news. We'll always do that. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Instagram, Locked On Packers. TikTok, Locked On Packers for as long as we have TikTok. Anyway, Locked On Packers. YouTube, Locked On Packers, so you can stay Locked On Packers.